Hi, welcome back to another episode of Warhammer videos. So today the question is, what would you do if you were transported to the, well, believably transported to the grim darkness of the far future? And know what I'd do? I'd try and get out. And in that vein, today I'm going to tell you about my experience at the Warhammer Imperium, nope, that's the magazine, Warhammer Immaterium escape room. Anyway, I'll have more on that just after this. So yeah, welcome back. Right, okay, first thing I need to remember to do this time is ask the question of the week. So let me know in the comments. What do you think of Warhammer escape rooms? Do you wish there was one near you? Is it something you'd want to try? I mean, this is an officially licensed escape room, so it's had all the blessings of the Warhammer team, the Games Workshop team. So is it something you'd want to do? Is it an experience you'd want? If you could, what kind of setting would you want, you know? Obviously spaceship's really good, but you know, what else would you want? Age of Sigmar one? Let me know what you think in the comments below. So my escape room experience, this one's quite a weird one, and it was a long time coming getting this set up. So the people who run it are called Escapologic. They run in Nottingham, quite close to Warhammer World, for anyone who knows what you know, the connection to Games Workshop there. I say close, like it's probably about an hour's walk sort of through a back road in Nottingham, or like a 5-10 minute drive with parking. So one's in the city centre and one's just on the Warhammer World's just on the outskirts with its own parking, and the escape room's in the city centre, slightly off the beaten path. Actually, it's about 3 to 5 minutes walk from the Warhammer store in Nottingham. So there's a bit of a connection there. So they opened a few years back, and they were actually getting, all the staff members were sort of like allowed to invite families and friends free to their existing escape rooms back when it first opened, just so they can kind of get the word out. And we'd never been to one before. It's not something I'd have paid for, but we were invited because it turns out that my wife's cousin, so my cousin-in-law, actually worked there, and he let us know about it and said, look, I can get you in. So we're like, yeah, why not? We'll try one out. It's an evening out, isn't it? So we got a couple of friends, and had a fantastic evening doing, the first one we did was called Butcher, and God, it was scary. I'll just say that. It was terrifying. So that's what they had. And at a family barbecue a couple of years back, he said, we're doing a Warhammer one, and I sort of like rolled my eyes and I thought, are you allowed to do that? But it turned out, yeah, they'd sort of like, they got the idea and they'd approached Games Workshop and said, we want to do this, and got the agreement and all those things. So they'd got all that set up and ready. Let me just sort my mic out. So they'd got all that set up and ready, and we planned to go there. We did an announcement about it and said, look, this is a thing. And after I did the announcement, I reached out to Escapologic. I think we'd done about 4 or 5 of their escape rooms now, took a few friends down, and we reached out to them, and I said, look, do you mind if we come and cover it? Because I'd like to get photos and things to actually, you know, show off the experience. Writing articles and doing videos is pretty dull when it's just a white screen or a talking head. So you've got to show some images just to kind of give people an idea of the interest and keep people engaged. So never got a response, unfortunately, other than the guy, the manager there, emailed me back, whose name was Jim. It turns out it's the same Jim who I used to work for back in like 2000 to 2002 when I worked for Game, the video game retailer in the UK. So I was like, oh, blooming heck. And then weirdly, a few months later, because they still hadn't opened yet, it turns out, so I live in a bit of a weird estate. It's sort of a new estate, so new built, and the internet around here is terrible. It's all really slow ADSL, like 13 meg upload. So getting these videos uploaded takes me like a day and a half. And I emailed the street saying, look, we can approach BT and we can pay for like an upgrade to fibre and do all this. One of the guys who emailed me back lives on my street, was one of the guys who owns Escapologic, and weirdly the house he lives in is actually next door to the one that we were originally going to buy, but there was a delay on it, so we moved to this one where the previous intended purchasers had moved out. So that's kind of like, that's 3 connections. I kind of thought the stars are aligning here. We've got to get in. So I emailed him. He put me in touch with kind of the events manager, and we got it all planned. Yay, fun. So we were going to go in March, not March. Emailed in March. We were going to go sort of like April, May. 2020. And then obviously 2020 happened. So everything was locked down, nothing happened, it was crazy. So what they did, because obviously, you know, with escape rooms, you've got to be in it, you've got to physically be in there, and it's quite a closed environment. So they were severely impacted by COVID. So what they started doing, really, really clever, is offering online sessions. So you can log in and each of you who is in the escape room essentially controls a staff member and tells them where to go and what to look at and what to pick up and what to do. And it's kind of like Nightmare, if anyone remembers the old sort of like 1980s, 1990s TV show. And you do that. So myself, Ben, who used to write on the Warhammer blog, you can now find him on Ashenhold Art, and Rob, who still writes with us, kind of our lead writer at the moment, he writes more than me. We all set up one evening to go and do their VR session, but we got a phone call a couple of hours before saying it had been cancelled due to technical difficulties. So this was like a year and a half in the making. And then just a couple of weeks ago, obviously lockdowns ended, some other friends just say, look, would you fancy a night out? And we said, yeah, definitely. Do you want to try an escape room? Obviously 2 birds, 1 stone. So we planned to go. And this weekend we've been, and it was really, really good. So the problem with telling you about this experience is it's an escape room, so I can't really tell you that much about the actual room layout, location or anything like that, because it would ruin it. Like, the whole point is to go in blind, and even if you go on the website, there's a video, not fohammer.com, if you go on the Escapologic website, there's a video that kind of gives you an intro to the story, but there's no pictures of the room or anything like that. There is now, we've put some up on fohammer.com, but and I'll share them in a moment. But yeah, so that was kind of the thing, is I can't really tell you anything about it. So let me just tell you about the experience more than anything. So you go to Escapologic, it's slightly off the beaten path, and it's in an old Victorian style, I think it's Victorian anyway, like old style townhouse, big doors, there's a yoga studio upstairs. And then you knock in, go through the doors, go down some steps, and you're basically in like a waiting area, it's changed quite a bit. When I was first going in there, it was just a white room with a bench, but now it's all stylized and it's like really wooden and really creative, looks good, LEDs everywhere, logos, it's really great. And you sit and you wait there, and they give you the sort of safety briefing and explain, and you all sit in pods, so you're separate, you know, for COVID restrictions and things, but they might be getting rid of the pods due to obviously restrictions ending. I quite like them, to be honest, even if the restrictions do go, because then you're not sat in a big group of a load of people, you sat with your group and you can talk as you're waiting. So you go in, they give you a bit of a safety briefing, tell you what's going off, and then one person takes each group to the different rooms, so they've got various rooms. So we went to Immaterium, which is in the reception area. They've got some outside and over the road, and yeah, so you go in, and I think the first thing to talk about is really the production quality. So and I've mentioned this on the website, whenever a third party now tells me, oh, we're making an official thing, I always worry. And I worry because I had an experience back in sort of 2008. I was a big fan of the TV show Heroes, only season 1, obviously. And I was so in love with that series. I mean, I've always liked my TV shows. I was so in love with that series. We went to London when the cast came to London. And we followed them around London to get signatures. We went to the Comic-Con event, which was on the Sunday of that week. And we went to a couple of other conventions where they were there, and I got things signed, like I got one of the swords signed. And then the organisers of those conventions said, we're doing a two-day, it was called Eclipse, a 2-day Heroes extravaganza with events and all these things. We were dead excited. The hype was incredible. And we got there on the first day, like queued outside, really excited. And I remember one of the things they said, I'll get to the point, one of the things they said was, we're going to have a recreation of Isaac's loft. And if you don't know the show, Isaac was like a painter, drug addict, struggled, but he could see into the future, and he'd paint what he saw. And there was an episode where they go to the future, and in that loft were like all the characters connected via string, and they said, oh, we're going to have a recreation of it. I thought, there's a lot of money going into this. There's thousands of people going. It's in a big convention centre. and you know, I'd love this, like to get some photos in that sort of room. And I swear, like the room that I turned up to was a store cupboard. It was obviously a store cupboard. They hadn't put anything on the walls to make it look like the colours of the loft or anything. It was just a store cupboard filled with the cheapest rubbish that they could find, like an easel, some old paints. Like it looked like a school's store cupboard, but then they put some wool up and then printed out pictures and put it on, and then they put a big mural on the floor, which was obviously a sticker, not a painting. And yeah, okay, I wasn't expecting a one-to-one recreation, but let's be fair, I'm in a Warhammer hobby, I'm expecting some level of production quality. But since then, whenever a company says, we're going to make X, that image comes back into my head, and I'm like, oh God, like, no, it's going to be bad. So I did go into this tentatively thinking, what am I going to say in the review if it's really, really bad? And it turns out I don't have to say anything. It was incredible. As soon as you get there from the outside, you can tell what it is. You can sort of like it's a feature. It really is a feature within the whole place. And I'd been to their previous ones, so that like their butcher one, you could kind of tell it's good and it makes you feel like you're in a basement, but you can very much tell you're in a downstairs room with things thrown together. This was spot on. Like you walk past it, it's got all the LEDs and lights up, it's got propaganda posters to, you know, make sure you know your traitors. You know, one of these Imperial Guards is a traitor. No, which one? And it looks impressive from the get-go. And you walk in and you stood in a very sort of small room, and you're given the kind of like the spiel, the story, and I was just in there enamored. And when I was looking around, I was not only thinking, wow, the scale's right, the skulls are right, the style is right, the design is right, but the colours were right. Like, I don't know if that when they got in touch with Games Workshop, you know, they've obviously painted it themselves, but when they got in touch with Games Workshop, did they turn around and go, right, we're going to need 60 litres of lead belcher and about 10 litres of null oil and all this and all that? Did they paint this thing with Games Workshop paints? Because I swear it was colour matched to a T. Like, you'll go in there and it'll be like, yep, I can tell how they made that. And you can tell how they made it. So when you're in there, you're not like immediately transported to a Space Hulk, but you can tell, like, this is made of MDF, that's some convoluted tubing, but it's done so well. It is done so incredibly well that you're just like, yeah, I feel like I'm in a real 40k room. Like, they've done a better quality conversion of this than the tank that sat outside Warhammer World, like, which is, you know, already it's a Rhino, but that's showing its age now. This was spot on. And then as for the experience itself, hang on, I need to adjust, I've sat on my foot. Ow. So as for the experience itself, I can't really tell you much about it. Like, an escape room is go into a room, search for stuff, find stuff, might be important, might be a red herring, try the stuff with other stuff, a little bit Monkey Island, and then once you've done that, hopefully you'll get an indication that you're in the right path or something like that. And you just do that, rinse and repeat until the end. You'll get puzzles, riddles, and all kinds of things to get through, sort of section by section and puzzle sequence by puzzle sequence, the rooms. And it's really, really good. So as you go in, like, the setup is basically you're on a rogue trader ship and you're a passenger making a pilgrimage, probably making a pilgrimage to Warhammer World, as most of you will be. So you're on a pilgrimage and you fire up your warp engines, and as soon as you transport into the warp, a load of ship systems fail, and you've got to make your way out of there using the craziest health and safety process ever written. So appropriately 40k then, to be honest. But again, that's kind of a joke my mate came up with, so I need to copyright, and he's got the copyright and everything on it. So yeah, so you're going in here and basically you're on a spaceship and your point is to escape. Now, for the Warhammer fans, ooh, warp, I know what that means. But for anyone else, like, it doesn't matter, it's a spaceship. You know, so even if you're not a Warhammer fan, it's basically, it's just a spaceship. Woohoo! And, you know, it could be the Sulaco, it could be Galactica, it could be Red Dwarf, as, again, my friends, having the only spaceship reference they knew, kept making references to Dwayne Dibley and Red Dwarf jokes throughout, which kind of ruined the experience for me, but I'm glad they had a good time considering I paid for it. But yeah, so you go in there and they set it up and they kind of said like, oh, and there's a presence on the ship. Now, at this point, you don't know what you're about to go in for. So, you know, there could be anything through the door and you don't know where it's going next. So I'm like, you know, I was expecting there could be something jump out at me. There could be, you know, just like a weird smell or some audio, things like that. But yeah. So we went through it and I've got to admit it was really, really good. And as my friends, it was their first, so me and my wife have done a few escape rooms, but my friends have never really done one before. And they went through and they were like really loving like, oh, get this, get that, and putting the pieces together to figure out the puzzles. And there's some bits where, you know, you can't do this as one person. You really, really need at least two of you because there's puzzles where you've got to work together. And that's pretty much standard in any escape room. So, you know, search, find, rinse, repeat. But as I was going through these rooms, these sort of sections, and the style was changing and the atmosphere was getting a bit more grim dark. It was really good to see that, and they were busy trying to solve the puzzles, and I was spending the whole time going, oh, I know this, oh, I know that, and they're just smiling and grinning to the side of my face, because I was like, oh, that's a, hey, is that a, and obviously I can't say what, but it was great just to have those nods. Don't get me wrong, like the story, the kind of setup they gave us, I was expecting it to be a bit more Warhammery, and I don't mean in the way that, you know, because I've got a knowledge of Warhammer, I would be able to do better in these rooms. In fact, I did the worst because I was distracted by everything. But, you know, you don't need any knowledge of Warhammer to do this room, but it's just great to have those nods. It's kind of like when you watch Ready Player One and you or at least I did, you're watching Ready Player One, you're like, I know this, that's Firefly, that's Freddy Krueger, those are the Ninja Turtles. Like, just those moments of sort of nostalgia and warmth and creativity, and all the while being in a believable environment for both a spaceship and a 40k place. Honestly, I hope you can tell how excited I still am, like days later, about just how good this was. It really was fantastic. I think the only things, it can't be perfect. I'm a critic at the end of the day, so I've got to have some bad stuff to say. The only things I'd mark it down on, and this is a slight mark, is when we went in there, he said, do you want the full Warhammer experience or do you want the thing? And everyone agreed, for my sake, because I'm reviewing it, do the full Warhammer experience. So I was like, great. So I was expecting like there to be a bit more story or something like that, something that, you know, was playing through the audio channel or the speakers or something. But throughout, I get the feeling that there was some story happening. But the problem is, because you're moving stuff and you're banging stuff around, by the time you realise there's something playing on the audio track and you've stopped and you've gone, shh, everyone shh, and you do get you can end up sort of split and away from each other as you're looking at different sections, then you end up like missing half of it here in the back end and going, was that a clue? Was that story? So if it was there, I think they could do with a bit of a rebalance of the audio, you know, because there's a background ambience sound playing, very Warhammer-esque, really good. Must be a licensed track from Warhammer, or they've done really well. And that's there. But again, it needed a balance, or at the very least, some kind of pre-alert message to say incoming message, so that you know to stop and listen to actually either hear the story, if there is one. I genuinely don't know. I got the impression there was, but I never heard it. Or, you know, if it's a clue, because you do get audio clues if you're struggling or something like that throughout the experience. So it's really good. So yeah, as you go through it, you kind of get to it, and they did this setup, and they say you've got to get to an escape pod. They said there's this presence of something growing, and I was like, ooh, could be chaos or tyrannids or something. Didn't know what to expect, but throughout I honestly didn't feel the presence of anything in there. One bit where we ruined it for ourselves, I forgot to mention, my friend had pulled his back out that week, so he was walking on a crutch, and basically he left his crutch out, but he was sort of going from wall to wall, and you know, wasn't quite as physically physically able as he's used to. And you do need to be somewhat physically able to do this rule. Unfortunately, it's not the most disabled friendly. It's the way of the escape room. There is a physical element to them as just as they are, but you can still watch and enjoy and be part of the experience for the most part. And he was going through it, and somehow we got to an area. How can I say this without ruining the... Okay, so there's a bit where you must do something to open something, and the something that gets opened is held on by a magnetic lock. And as we were looking around, my friend actually managed to brute force this lock on the thing that opens, and that kind of left us confused a bit, because we stood around going, well, there's nothing in there apart from some things. And then I think there was a panic because something opened, and I think that was because the guy operating the room kind of realised, they've skipped this bit with the brute force, I'm going to just move on to the next bit and let them continue. So he kind of had to make a bit of a cut there for us. But the problem is, we knew there were things to do still in this area, in this puzzle sequence. So when we moved to the next sequence and we were a bit lost, we kept going back going, have we missed something, have we missed something? But we'd lost it because we'd sort of accelerated forward, and we just kept wasting our time going back. By the end of it, we'd managed to get out. We did manage to complete it. My wife and I have done a few of these, and it only took us about 35 minutes. And that included the time where I managed to brute force, not intentionally, but I went to open a door with what looked like pulleys, and it turned out the pulley was a pneumatic piston that opened the door, and I just yanked it off. And if you knew me, look, I'm not strong, right? This isn't possible. I can't pull anything off. Realise what I said, but I can't pull a metal pneumatic piston off a door. So somehow the screws had sheared off or something like that. I wasn't yanking on the door. I just went to open it and it came off. So anyway, we managed to get out, and they put us in. Sort of 36 minutes was good. I think that I felt like that was a bit fast. Like, so maybe the guy who was operating the room probably, yes, he had to make that cut for us, but there were a few times where hints kind of accelerated us on. But in all honesty, because knowing where that part in the sequence was and what we needed to do to complete, we must have been at that point at about 20 minutes in, meaning, you know, that's following that, there was a 5-minute, you know, solution. So he could have let us kept going a lot longer, trying to work out how we could figure out that puzzle, and we'd have got it. But they gave us an audio clue, which accelerated us on a bit faster than probably needed. So we were stuck in that room. We weren't in that room probably for as long as we really should have been. So that's the only bits that are down. But again, afterwards, I spoke to them and said, look, the guys have said we can do a review. So I went back in, took some snaps, and did that. But again, the production quality is such that if you are going to Warhammer World, or if you're stopping in Nottingham and you're a Warhammer fan, genuinely, you can't miss this experience. Like I said, escape rooms are some of the most fun you can have. If you've not done one, this is a good one to get you started off on, and it is a generally quite easy one. So, you know, it's not going to be too taxing. You don't have to be like some kind of crazy mind hunter or you know, have a PhD to get through it. It's relatively straightforward in its approach to puzzles, but just being in that environment and being in that thing is absolutely fantastic. So my recommendation, my review, if you're going to Nottingham and it's a trip and it's a journey, and especially if you're staying over, you cannot miss this. You can't do it. Make this part of your Warhammer journey experience, and there's some good food nearby as well. So yeah, make that all part of your trip to Warhammer, and you won't regret it. You really won't. Anyway, that's all I had to say about that. It's just me waffling for, what, 25 minutes now? Yikes. So I'm going to leave you to it and shut up and just say Fohammer out.